Good evening, and welcome to Third Church of Christ Scientist of New York City. Let's begin the meeting with singing hymn number 189, 189. I'll read the second verse. God keepeth me from falling, fulfilleth all my need. His love doth e'er uphold me in faithful word and deed. He keepeth me from evil, my onward way doth trace, my going and my coming he crowneth with his grace. Number 189. I'll read from the Bible and from Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures by Mary Baker Eddy. The subject of this evening's readings is Safe Travel. The Bible. Psalms. Whither shall I go from thy spirit, or whither shall I flee from thy presence? If I ascend up into heaven, thou art there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there shall thy hand lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me. Genesis. More Psalms. Let integrity and uprightness preserve me, for I wait on thee. Now Genesis. Israel loved Joseph more than all his children because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood round about, and made obeisance to my sheaf. And his brethren said to him, Shalt thou indeed reign over us, or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us?" And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it his brethren, and said, "Behold, I have dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me." And his brethren went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said unto Joseph, "Do not thy brethren feed the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send thee unto them." And he said to him, "Here am I." And he said to him, "Go, I pray thee, see whether it be well with thy brethren and well with the flocks, and bring me word again." So he sent him out of the vale of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a certain man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, saying, "What seekest thou?" And he said, "I seek my brethren. Tell me, I pray thee, where they feed their flocks." And the man said, "They are departed hence, for I heard them say, Let us go to Dothan." And Joseph went after his brethren and found them in Dothan. And when they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. And they said one to another, "Behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him and cast him into some pit. And we will say, Some evil beast hath devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams." And Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands, and said, "Let us not kill him." And Reuben said unto them, "Shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid him out of their hands, to deliver him to his father again." And it came to pass, when Joseph was come unto his brethren, that they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was on him. And they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty, there was no water in it. And they sat down to eat bread, and they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels, bearing spicery and balm and myrrh, going to carry it down to Egypt. And Judah said unto his brethren, "What profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come, and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh." And his brethren were content. Then there passed by Midianites, merchantmen, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit, and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they brought Joseph into Egypt. And Reuben returned unto the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit, and he rent his clothes. And he returned unto his brethren and said, "The child is not, and I, whither shall I go?" And they took Joseph's coat and killed a kid of the goats and dipped the coat in the blood. And they sent the coat of many colors, and they brought it to their father and said, "This have we found. Know now whether it be thy son's coat or no." And he knew it and said, "It is my son's coat. An evil beast hath devoured him. Joseph is without doubt rent in pieces." And Jacob rent his clothes and put sackcloth upon his loins and mourned for his son many days. And the Midianites sold him into Egypt unto Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's and captain of the guard. And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand. And Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him. And he made him overseer over his house, and all that he had he put into his hand. And it came to pass, from the time that he had made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in the house and in the field. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and knew not aught he had, save the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a goodly person and well favored. And it came to pass after these things, that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, Lie with me. But he refused, and said unto his master's wife, Behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in the house, and he hath committed all that he hath to my hand. There is none greater in this house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And it came to pass, as she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her, to lie by her, or to be with her. And it came to pass about this time, that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men of the house there within. And she caught him by the garment, saying, Lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand, and fled, and got him out. And it came to pass, when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand, and was fled forth, that she called unto the men of her house, and spake unto them, saying, See, he hath brought in an Hebrew unto us to mock us. He came in unto me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. And it came to pass, when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me, and fled, and got him out. And she laid up his garment by her until his Lord came home. And she spake unto him according to these words, saying, The Hebrew servant which thou hast brought unto us came in unto me to mock me. And it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled out. And it came to pass, when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spake unto him, saying, After this manner did thy servant to me, that his wrath was kindled. And Joseph's master took him, and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound. And he was there in the prison. But the Lord was with Joseph, and showed him mercy, and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison, and whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. The keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because the Lord was with him, and that which he did, the Lord made it to prosper. And it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. Then spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, We dreamed a dream in one night, I and he. We dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And there was there with us a young man, an Hebrew, servant to the captain of the guard. And we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams, to each man according to his dream he did interpret. And it came to pass, as he interpreted to us, so it was. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. And he shaved himself and changed his raiment, and came in unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say of thee that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, In my dream, behold, I stood upon the bank of the river, and behold, there came up out of the river 7 kine, fat-fleshed and well-favored, and they fed in a meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them, poor and very ill-favored and lean-fleshed, such as I never saw in all the land of Egypt for badness. And the lean and the ill-favored kine did eat up the first 7 fat kine. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them, but they were still ill-favored as at the beginning. So I awoke. And I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears came up in one stalk, full and good, and behold, 7 ears withered, thin, and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. And I told this unto the magicians, but there was none that could declare it to me. And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, The dream of Pharaoh is one. God hath showed Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good kine are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one. And the 7 thin and ill-favored kine that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty ears blasted with the east wind shall be 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he showeth unto Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. And there shall arise after them 7 years of famine, and all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land. And the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of that famine following, for it shall be very grievous. Now therefore, let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years. And let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. And that food shall be for store to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said unto his servants, Can we find such a one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Forasmuch as God hath showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, See, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand, and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, Go unto Joseph. What he saith to you, do. And the famine was over all the face of the earth. And Joseph opened all the storehouses, and sold unto the Egyptians. And the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. And all countries came into Egypt to Joseph for to buy corn, because that the famine was so sore in all lands. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I am Joseph. Doth my father yet live? And his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. And Joseph said unto his brethren, Come near to me, I pray you. And they came near. And he said, I am Joseph your brother, whom ye sold into Egypt. Now therefore be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves that ye sold me hither, for God did send me before you to preserve life. So now it was not you that sent me hither, but God. And he hath made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Haste ye, and go up to my father, and say unto him, Thus saith thy son Joseph, God hath made me lord of all Egypt. Come down unto me, tarry not. He kissed all his brethren, and wept upon them. And after that his brethren talked with him. And the fame thereof was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brethren are come. And it pleased Pharaoh well, and his servants. So he sent his brethren away, and they departed. And he said unto them, See that ye fall not out by the way. And they went up out of Egypt, and came into the land of Canaan, unto Jacob their father, and told him, saying, Joseph is yet alive, and he is governor over all the land of Egypt. And Jacob's heart fainted, for he believed them not. And they told him all the words of Joseph which he had said unto them. And when he saw the wagons which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob their father revived. And Israel said, It is enough. Joseph, my son, is yet alive. I will go and see him before I die. And Joseph made ready his chariot, and went up to meet Israel his father to Goshen, and presented himself unto him. And he fell on his neck, and wept on his neck a good while. And Israel said unto Joseph, Now let me die, since I have seen thy face, because thou art yet alive. And Joseph said unto his brethren, and unto his father's house, I will go and show Pharaoh, and say unto him, My brethren and my father's house, which were in the land of Canaan, are come unto me. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh, and went out from before Pharaoh. And Joseph placed his father and his brethren, and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramesses, as Pharaoh had commanded. And Joseph nourished his father and his brethren, and all his father's household. And Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the country of Goshen. And they had possessions therein, and grew and multiplied exceedingly. Psalms. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. I'll now read correlative passages from the Christian Science textbook, Science and Health, with Key to the Scriptures, by Mary Baker Eddy. Joseph, a corporeal mortal, a higher sense of truth, rebuking mortal belief or error, and showing the immortality and supremacy of truth. Pure affection, blessing its enemies. The footsteps of thought, rising above material standpoints, are slow and portend a long night to the traveler. But the angels of his presence, the spiritual intuitions that tell us when the night is far spent, the day is at hand, are our guardians in the gloom. Whoever opens the way in Christian Science is a pilgrim and stranger, marking out the path for generations yet unborn. The nature of Christianity is peaceful and blessed, but in order to enter into the kingdom, the anchor of hope must be cast beyond the veil of matter into the Shekinah into which Jesus has passed before us. And this advance beyond matter must come through the joys and triumphs of the righteous, as well as through their sorrows and afflictions. Like our Master, we must depart from material sense into the spiritual sense of being. The God-inspired walk calmly on, though it be with bleeding footprints, and in the hereafter they will reap what they now sow. The pampered hypocrite may have a flowery pathway here, but he cannot forever break the golden rule and escape the penalty due. Spiritual ideas unfold as we advance. Whoever would demonstrate the healing of Christian Science must abide strictly by its rules, heed every statement, and advance from the rudiments laid down. There is nothing difficult nor toilsome in this task when the way is pointed out, but self-denial, sincerity, Christianity, and persistence alone win the prize, as they usually do in every department of life. The wrong done another reacts most heavily against one's self. Right adjusts the balance sooner or later. Think it easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for you to benefit yourself by injuring others. Man's moral mercury, rising or falling, registers his healing ability and fitness to teach. You should practice well what you know, and you will then advance in proportion to your honesty and fidelity, qualities which ensure success in this science. But it requires a higher understanding to teach this subject properly and correctly than it does to heal the most difficult case. Progress takes off human shackles. The finite must yield to the infinite. Advancing to a higher plane of action, thought rises from the material sense to the spiritual, from the scholastic to the inspirational, and from the mortal to the immortal. Let's pray together silently for a few moments, and then pray aloud together the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Let's sing hymn number 203. 203. I'll read the second verse. Help us to know that all is well, e'en though we wander through earth's shade, to know that all thy children dwell within love's stronghold, unafraid. Teach us to follow fearlessly the way our gentle Master trod. 'Twill lead us safely home to thee, O loving Father, Mother, God. Number 203. This church is a branch of the Mother Church, the First Church of Christ Scientist in Boston, Massachusetts. We hold Sunday services at 11 a.m. and Wednesday testimony meetings at 7:30 p.m. We also have services in Spanish, Sundays at 1 p.m. and Wednesdays at 5:30 p.m. All services are held online and in person, and all are welcome. Third Church offers Sunday school classes online and in person for children and teens. These free one-hour classes are available each Sunday. At Sunday school, students learn how much God loves them and cares for them. They also learn about the Bible characters and lessons and the healing power of prayer. For more information on times and classes, please send us an email, thirdchurch@thirdchurchnyc.com. Third Church maintains a reading room on the lower level of this building. The reading room provides a quiet place for prayer and study, and all are welcome. Here you may purchase books and recordings on Christian Science. The Reading Room has the latest issues of the Christian Science Monitor, an award-winning international news weekly available to read or purchase. Reading Room hours are Monday through Friday from 1 to 4 p.m. Replays in English and Spanish are available of this church's August talk by Lyle Young, CSB, titled Christian Science, a High Standard of Care, on our website, thirdchurchnyc.com. Replays are also available on our website, thirdchurchnyc.com, in English and Spanish, of a talk by Lona Ingwerson, CS, titled The 23rd Psalm. You are invited to a Christian Science lecture entitled Moving Past Fear to Healing, to be given by Lisa Troseth, CSB, at First Church of Christ Scientist, New York, 68th Street and Central Park West, on Friday, October 27th at 7:30 p.m. There will be music starting at 7 p.m. During this lecture, Lisa will discuss how understanding God's all-embracing love can overcome fear, reveal peace, and move life forward. Third Church of Christ Scientist, New York, this church, and other Christian Science churches in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut invite you to a series of weekly Saturday morning inspirational radio talks in Spanish that will air from October 7th through January 6th of 2024 from 9 to 9:25 a.m. on Wado 1280 AM radio. The series, titled The Road to Christian Healing, will address topics such as inner peace that keeps us safe, Christian healing, integrity assured, Christian Science, a high standard of care, to name a few. The experienced, internationally based speakers are members of the Christian Science Board of Lectureship. Replays of each talk will be available at thirdchurchnyc.com until January 31st, 2024. Join us starting on Saturday, October 7th at 9 a.m. on Wado 1280 AM radio. The talks will also stream on our website, thirdchurchnyc.com. The first Spanish-language lecture on October 7th, sponsored by churches in Englewood, New Jersey, and Tarrytown, New York, is titled La Curación Cristiana, Christian Healing. The lecturer is Evelyn Frizzotti. This meeting is now open for all to share experiences of healing and spiritual insights that prove God's ever-presence and power in their lives. If you're listening by telephone and would like to speak, press *6 and wait until your line is unmuted. Please speak directly into the microphone of your phone. Your message will be easier to hear if you do not use the speaker function. If you're watching via Zoom, you can choose the raise your hand icon or unmute yourself and speak.
One of the first practitioners I worked with, and I was very new to Christian Science, and I remember one of the things he said was, one can make too much of evil and one can make not enough of evil. And that has stayed with me because we have to have a balanced sense of how to deal with error in a particular moment, not dismissing it as unworthy of our attention and not being magnetized to it. And I find the same applies to dreams, the night dream, as we call it, I guess, in Christian Science. And I've always enjoyed dreams and enjoyed thinking about them. And when one goes through a conservatory training in the theater, one often has a teacher who asks you to write down all your dreams, etc. And I had so many in a night and remembered them so vividly that it would sometimes take a half an hour or so in the morning to do so. But in Christian Science, dreams can be instructive. I find sometimes when I have a dream that surprises me, that it may be something that I'm not fully dealing with during the day or in my experience. And the way that sort of subconscious or unconscious comes through is in the dream, and sometimes is a clue as to what one needs to deal with. Certainly, Mrs. Eddy, while not making an entire career out of dream analysis, certainly paid attention to her dreams from time to time. My teacher was fond of saying, or at least I remember her saying several times in class and in association, and maybe even in an office visit, that when people say that there's only one consciousness, it's the material consciousness, the personal consciousness, and there is no other kind of consciousness, and therefore Christian Science is too difficult to navigate. And I would imagine we've all felt that way from time to time. But she said that right here in the human experience, we have a vivid reminder that there are two kinds of consciousness. There is what we call the human consciousness, that's basically matter-based, and there is the dream consciousness. So why not take the next step and know that there is another consciousness available to us, and it's what we call in Christian Science spiritual sense, or the presence of the Christ, which is always speaking to us, and we simply have to awake, stay awake, listen to what the Christ is saying, and that is the true consciousness. That is the consciousness of God's reality. I appreciated hearing the Joseph story, and always appreciate the longer biblical narratives. Thank you for the readings.
Thank you.
Thank you for your readings. It struck me in hearing about material sense and spiritual sense that that can, to be put in plain language or more understandable to me, to be to material sense, and the previous speaker referred to this as a personal sense. It's a sense of existence separate from God, that we have our own ego, our own life. It's matter-based, and that's who we are. And the spiritual sense is to have a different standpoint of thought, that God is the one ego and that we are his reflection. I mean, this idea of reflection is so fundamental to Christian Science. But it's right out of the first chapter of Genesis, when the scriptures say that God made us in man in his image and likeness. And that, there are so many words in the Bible, or maybe even in the writings of Mary Baker Eddy, that are in usage only in church, and so you almost lose track of what they mean in everyday parlance. And so that's helpful to me, material sense and spiritual sense. It's just is our standpoint our own ego, or is our standpoint that God is the one ego, and we're really reflection, and our life is not about taking care of the separate ego so much as it's being a reflection. Last week, I think I testified about a sense of we all know what good is, and we think we know what evil is, and they both exist. And that the Christian Science teaching is that the only reality is God, and that evil is a lie. It's not true. And that when the interpretation of the Lord's Prayer that says, or when the term is used, God is all in all, what does that mean? It's not, you don't hear that on the street. And I think it means that our sense of evil is lie, and that good is the only reality, and therefore the good is all. There isn't any evil in it. That allness and the truth is without evil. That the evil is a term, a belief, a mistake. Once I gave a talk. My field happens to be in law and with fiduciary planning. And in illustrating the issue of, well, who do you want for an executor or a trustee in matters, we talked about the Joseph qualities, that all people need someone who is faithful. Joseph was certainly faithful to his master. He disciplined himself. He did not seek his own, but sought to be loyal to his duty, and is attentive. Everything prospered with Joseph, and it wasn't, the Bible is always saying it wasn't it wasn't ego. His ego separate from God. He always said, well, God will give Pharaoh the answer. It's that basis of thinking that is God is reflection, that we get our ideas from mind. And so the story of Joseph is a very good story about the faithful servant. That's what Joseph was. And these are qualities that are needed among those who have the responsibility to enforce and be guided by the law. But thank you very much for that story.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's lovely readings. And it reminds me, years ago, I had to take a trip from New York to the Philippines. And that in those days, it was Pan Am was still the airline that was in service. And it was to give a course in Manila, a computer course in Manila. It was being sponsored by the United Nations. And I had a UN visa, a special UN visa, which was almost like being treated like a VIP status. And so there I am on the Pan Am flight, flying over the Pacific Ocean, and I'm looking down, and I'm thinking, my word, if this plane stops flying, I'm going to be in deep trouble, because you're spending hours going over the Pacific Ocean. And you have plenty of time to think. And as I was thinking, I said, well, what would I know metaphysically? And I had taken some flying lessons, and so I was very acquainted with aeronautics and started working all kinds of really fancy ideas of arguments about flying and what have you, and thought I was pretty clever, but I never really got my piece about it. Working on the weather and working on the stall speeds and all kinds of things like that, and I went and I gave the course. I came back, everything was fine. And I went to a party with some young friends here in the city. And I was relating this, and I was telling all these fancy arguments that I was using. And there was a member of this, a fellow who's actually was a member of this church, later became a Christian Science practitioner and teacher. And he was just silently listening as I was going through all of this. And then the group broke up, and he just quietly came up to me afterward and said, "And of course, George, you knew you weren't in the plane." And I said, "Of course I knew that. But no sooner had I said that, and he walked away, I realized, no, I had not known that. I was very much in that plane. I had a VIP visa. I was like very important, and everything had to be done to keep that plane flying. And I realized, as long as I thought that I was in the plane, then all that work meant nothing. That I was not in the plane, that I lived and moved and had my being in God. And Mrs. Eddy talks and says, coming and going belong to mortal consciousness. And my consciousness, and Adam, where art thou? Consciousness, where art thou? My consciousness was in the plane, and it would have been totally fruitless to do it. The whole simplicity of it was to realize, no, I was not in the plane. And another member of this church that I knew years ago used to say, I remember we were on a special committee at the time, and he said, the church is not in the community, but the community is in the church, meaning church is a spiritual idea. And I realized, same thing. I'm not in the plane is in me. In other words, I'm a spiritual idea, it's in my consciousness. And then I'm not under the control of all those weather conditions, fly, what have you. I'm free of it because I'm a spiritual idea. And what a relief that is to know that coming and going belong to mortal consciousness, and that we live and move and have our being in God. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for the testimonies, your prayers, and your presence and your support. Let's close with singing hymn number 39. Come, gracious Spirit, heavenly love, with light and comfort from above. Be thou our guardian, thou our guide, o'er every thought and step preside. Number 39. you.